Hi friends, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michaela and I'm going to be talking about Carol Ann Tomlinson's book on differentiated instruction. So what is differentiated instruction? We've already talked about it in class, but I'm just going to give a brief summary. Essentially, differentiated instruction is building lessons, developing teaching materials, and varying our approach so that all students, regardless of where they are starting from, can learn content effectively according to their needs. And I think that's the key word there, according to the needs of students. And that is actually going to be the first factor that plays into one of the challenges of differentiated instruction that Tomlinson mentions in her book. So the first challenge is student diversity. How do we meet the need of all students if we have 20 plus students in our classroom? Each student is either all the way up here, very knowledgeable of the area. Some students are at the middle where they're learning and they're getting the hang of it. And then we have students who their learning, knowledge, and understanding skills are at the very low, meaning that they are not knowledgeable in the content area that we're trying to teach and they don't have the basic skills needed in order for them to understand the content we are wanting to teach. And so that's the first challenge. The second challenge is the increased academic rigor. Based on an article that I was reading, it says that here, now in the 21st century, basic literacy, numeracy, and content knowledge are no longer enough. Students have to be able to negotiate the complexities of contemporary life. They need to be able to think and read critically. They need to be able to express themselves using digital tools and solve complex problems. So there's this new challenge that we have as educators in the field, and these two challenges are going to be difficult and makes us more accountable as educators to be effective teachers. However, our overall goal is to ensure the progress of every student regardless of where they are at. So I'm just going to discuss about some myths on differentiated instructions because I think a lot of times we can get that confused what is and isn't differentiated instruction. So I'm just going to read off of Tomlinson's book, something she mentions. Differentiated instruction is not a bag of tricks or set of strategies that can be plunked into low-quality curriculum. When we think of differentiated instructions, I think it can be easy to confuse them for like games or activities that will help learners turn on their light bulb, but it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant instruction. It's part of our instruction constantly. We have to be assessing our students, and we have to be constantly adjusting our material activities, our lesson plans to meet the students where they are at. It's not writing individual lesson plans for every student. We can teach and meet the needs of all students through a lesson plan. Obviously not in one day. It takes much more than that, but it's not writing individual lesson plans for every student. And I like this one. Differentiated instruction is not more important for certain groups of students. Example, students with IEPs or English language learners. Differentiated instruction is for all students. All students have different kinds of needs, and we have to be able to meet the needs of every student. And so I really like that she mentioned that. Another key point that she talks about in her book is a growth mindset. We have to foster in our students a growth mindset. A growth mindset is one that is motivated to work through challenges in their learning journey. A fixed mindset is a student who feels that they cannot learn beyond what they already know and are not willing to enter into those challenging tasks or assignments. And so we have to foster a growth mindset, and that is done through cultivating a positive relationship with our students. When we begin a unit, we have to lower the affective filter, meaning we have to make the environment very welcoming, a safe environment where they feel okay to make mistakes, because they are going to make mistakes. So we have to have a positive learning environment by lowering that affective filtering. We have to cultivate a positive relationship by getting to know our students. But when we know our students, we know what their needs are, and we know what's the best way to help them according to their needs. Another important factor that Tomlinson talks about is learning goals. An article that I was reading talks about the importance of the student and teacher having a common learning goal. If there is not a common learning goal, students are going to be less willing to work towards learning. They won't know why they're learning. They may not necessarily care for learning. But if you create a common learning goal and make it personal, they're going to be more motivated to learn. So the article says, when teachers help students connect to classroom goals in a way that has personal meaning for them, there is a much greater chance that they will be motivated to engage in the sometimes hard work required in learning. And so that's one thing that Tomlinson discusses in her book. Another thing that Tomlinson discusses in her book that I really liked was the analogy of a road trip. As you plan your lesson for students, and as you try to think of ways how to incorporate differentiated instruction, you question yourself, okay, where do I start? And so she mentions the analogy of a road trip. And I'm just going to read that real quick. So planning a unit is like planning a road trip. From one city to another. Deciding where to go is an obvious and critical first step, because if you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. So we have to begin with the end in mind when designing units to ensure that the goals, assessments, and instructions are aligned. And so those are some key components to differentiated instruction. Goals, which we've already talked about, having a common learning goal with the students. Assessment, you have to know where your students are before the course or before the unit. You have to know where they stand during the unit, and you have to be able to evaluate your students after the unit has been completed. And then instructions, how you teach, the way you present your content is equally important to assessing your students. Assessment is a very important and vital part to differentiated instruction. Based on an article that I read, it says that assessment helps students learn and succeed in school by making as clear as possible to them, their teachers, and other education stakeholders the nature of their accomplishments and the progress of their learning. So Tomlinson in her book states that assessment is kind of asking the question, are we there yet? Are we there yet? When you're on that road trip, you need to know where your students stand before, during, and after the trip. And so in her book, she provides a lot of strategies, activities you can use for pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessments that help students as well as teachers see the progress of students. So that's the key highlight of assessments, the progress of students, how they're doing, how they're getting to the final destination. Are they going off track? Do they need to be pointed back into the right direction? So assessment is a vital aspect to differentiated instruction. So to conclude, differentiated instruction is going to look different for everyone. However, some key important highlights in differentiated instruction is creating a growth mindset. is creating a common learning goal between the teacher and the student, presenting the material, the unit as a concept that is personal to students. That way they are engaged and motivated to learn, and you have to be able to assess your students before, during, and after the unit in order to understand where they stand at the beginning, where they stand during the unit lesson plan, or I'm sorry, the unit as a whole, and to be able to evaluate if they made progress or no progress. And as you assess students, you will be accommodating, creating different roads that students can take so that what they are receive in the class, they can learn, and they're going to learn it differently. But there's a lot of activities out there, a lot of strategies you can use, and her book even provides a lot of ways of measuring progress through different assessment activities. She provides a lot of activities on how to cultivate a positive relationship between student and teacher, some ideas. She presents in her book a lot of ways to set the tone in the class during those first few days. But essentially, differentiated instruction is going to look different for everyone, but you want to make sure that you have those key things in differentiated instruction. So thanks for watching my video, and hope you guys were able to take some important key facts in from her book. Thank you.